Welcome to the Write Right Academy. I'm Matthew R. Miller. This is P. Don. He's one of my writing partners. Gives me a lot of inspiration, and he wanted to show his face. He wants to try to be a model and do some acting, so this is his little, intro. So, great. Let's talk about setting. Setting of your story, very important. It's more than just a place, okay? Setting, generally speaking, is the time and the place where your story happens. But you can't just randomly come up with a setting. There's a lot more to it. The setting itself has to be a part of the story. It needs to have symbolism, meaning, a purpose. It needs to relate to the theme of the story. It needs to create atmosphere. It should drive the plot. So think of a setting like really another character in your story. A setting can be realistic, taking place in the past or the present. What I mean by realistic is that you're describing something that could potentially happen. Even if it's fantasy horror, it's something that already happened. But if it's in the future, it can be imaginary because we don't know the future yet, you see? So if you're writing a book set in, 3,000 years from now, you're a lot freer to create your own world, but it's still imaginary because we don't know, if that makes sense. Also, if you choose a setting in the future, by the way, it's going to affect things like technology, dialogue, clothing, mannerisms, food. Setting a novel in the past also requires some research, and it's going to determine things like technology, dialogue, clothing, mannerisms. Because if you set a novel, let's say in, the Middle Ages, 1300 CE in England, okay, do you know how those people talked, how they interacted? Do you know what their customs were? Do you know what their technology was? So you need to think about these things. Do the research. If you write in the future, what about the dialogue? Is going to be a new slang? Are people going to speak the way they did now? Or are things going to be different? Well, you have to explain some terminology. If you write in the past, well, let's say you're writing at a time when English still used thou, thee, ye. Do you know how to use those properly? Will you use them, or will you just modernize the dialogue? So you see that the time of your story has a lot to take into consideration. Writing in the present is probably the easiest because if you live in the present, you're most familiar with this time. So the question is, do you write in the past, present, or future? This is a part of your setting. Well, if you write in the past, sometimes it can really strongly set the theme, the tone, the atmosphere. It can be dreamy, nostalgic, haunting. For example, when in the past do you think you could set the following? A haunted house story. The first thing that comes to my mind is, let's say, Victorian England. A military epic. Well, maybe World War II, or maybe some ancient battle of the Spartans. A love story. A lot of possibility here, maybe the 1920s. A spy thriller. What about the Cold War between the U.S. and Russia? And so your setting, the time of your setting, is going to determine a lot about the theme, and you need to choose a time period that fits, right? And understand also that readers will often associate a time period with a general emotion or stereotype. So keep that in mind. If you're writing about World War II, you know that most readers are going to associate that with stress, grief, war, violence, destruction, things like that. The future, it can be disturbing, dystopian, have a foreign or alien feel, or it can be promising and hopeful. The future often will be associated in the reader's mind with things like advanced technology, extraterrestrial contact. So you have lots of leeway in the future to invent your own world. But the problem is that it needs to be consistent. Make it consistent. If in the future you have flying cars and all of a sudden there's a car driving on the road, your reader's going to ask why. Why isn't it flying? Okay. The place of your setting is also a huge factor. It's also going to play a huge role in everything, your characters, your dialogue, your plot, your theme. So consider for place, what's the country, what's the region, what's the city, or is it set out in a rural landscape? How many locations will your scenes have? Will they take place in one general area, or will the characters be traveling a lot? What about things like architecture, weather, seasons, local culture, local speech? So if you're writing about a place that is not the one you are familiar with, you need to do a lot of research. And this is across all settings. You really need to do the research. The only exception would be, I guess, if you're an expert in your own local culture or truly an expert in another culture, maybe you do less research. People also tend to be defensive of their homes, their homeland, their city. So if you want to write about a place you don't personally know a lot about or haven't personally been, be sure to do that research, make it accurate. Try to avoid stereotypes. I'm here in Louisiana, USA, and what stereotypes do you think of? Swamp dwellers, alligators, things like that. That's a part of Louisiana, but it's not the only part. If you do use stereotypes of a place, try to use them in a non-cliched way. So, for example, what do you associate with the following locations? The southern U.S. You might think of things like oak trees, moss, old family secrets, country life, lost in the past, language with a drawl. What about New York City? You might think lively, diverse, brusque, big. Japan, high-tech, advanced, polite, orderly, sushi, which I love, lots of islands. What about Paris? You might think of it being a refined culture, food, wine, music, strolling the streets, cafe culture. What about Kenya in Africa? You might think of savannas, beautiful animals, beautiful landscapes, safaris, villages of people. So choose your setting carefully. It's going to determine a lot about the rest of your book. Are you going to write it in the past, the present, or the future? Where is it going to take place? Don't just randomly choose these things. Think about it. If you're going to make a plan, a plot, an outline for your book, then be sure to write down everything you can about your location, about the time and the place you're setting. Make a list of words that you associate with it. So consider the following books, which I think are pretty well-known books, and how the setting chosen really influenced the story. The Crucible, the play by Arthur Miller. It was set in the Salem witch trials in the USA in the 1600s. And of course, that's what it's about. It's about a lot of things, but it's about that believing things, believing accusations, rumors, and how it's hard to stop them. The Scarlet Letter, that's set in Puritan New England, USA, and I suppose, the 1700s. And so the Puritan culture there really determined the way they viewed Hester Prynne. The Great Gatsby, 1920s, right? This Gilded Age where people in the story, right? They're wild, they're rich. And then what about To Kill a Mockingbird, set in the 1940s or 50s, I think. And when in the U.S. there's a time of great injustice against Black citizens, and how a Black person put on trial could be found guilty even if they're not, and so social justice, things like that. And I chose those books that are set in the U.S., but it can be any book anywhere. So keep that in mind. Your setting, your time and place will have a huge part in your novel, and so choose it carefully. Hope that gives you some ideas, some advice. By the way, I'm a writer, as I've mentioned. I write horror novels, and I'm going to put a link to my books in the description of this video. I'd love it if you check them out, see what you think. Maybe buy one, check it out, read it. They're all available in a paperback, audiobook, and ebook format. So thanks a lot. I'm Matthew R. Miller. You're watching the Write Right Academy.